Welcome to the Youth Voice, a podcast giving young people a voice in politics across the island of Ireland. Today we're joined by Minister Robin Walker, a member of the Conservative Party and MP for Worcester, as well as a Minister of State for Northern Ireland. So thank you for coming on, Minister.
Delighted to be here. Thanks for having me.
So I suppose we'll get straight in. One of the big things at the moment for young people is the idea of votes at 16. In 2012, it was passed by the Northern Ireland Assembly to support it. However, because that's not a devolved matter, it was down to the Westminster government to come up with that, to, I suppose, bring it in, and it never really happened. So do you think if the Assembly called for it again for votes at 16 in Northern Ireland, or say it was brought in by, I suppose, a backbencher or in a private member's bill or some form in the Westminster government, would the Conservative Party back that?
Well, I was elected on a manifesto which was about keeping the franchise of parliamentary elections where it is at 18. And I think there are good logical reasons to do that. The age of 18, not 16, is widely recognised as the age at which one becomes a full adult, and full adult citizenship and individual rights, from drinking to smoking to voting, should be gained at adulthood. So I think there's a strong logic with keeping the vote where it is and where it has been, and indeed where it is in most countries in Europe, which is at 18. But of course, this is a subject which I recognise young people continue to debate passionately, and I think it's a good thing to have those debates and those discussions. But I'm not aware of any plans by the UK government to change that voting age, and that is a voting age at 18, which is consistent for all parliamentary elections.
Okay. I suppose moving on from that, with, I suppose, the fallout of Brexit, the NI protocol, things are very, I suppose you could say, tense in Northern Ireland at the moment. It's quite intimidating, especially for someone from my background and somebody from my generation who hasn't known conflict in Northern Ireland before. We don't know what it's like. We don't really know, whether the next morning's going to erupt into civil war. We have no real idea how this works. But I suppose you grew up, in that kind of time where that kind of conflict existed, and you, obviously, as a member of the Northern Ireland office, I suppose you know what's kind of going on. What would you say is the kind of situation in terms of the Conservative Party as to what's happening with the NI protocol and what's actually happening over in Northern Ireland at the moment?
Well, the first thing to say is I think the protocol was put in place for good reasons. It was all about trying to protect the unique set of arrangements that there are in the island of Ireland, both north, south, east and west, and respect the concerns of both communities, of all communities, I should say, both people who look to Northern Ireland as part of the island of Ireland and people who look to Northern Ireland, crucially, as part of the United Kingdom, to respect the fact that that is complicated. The protocol put in place some arrangements which were about trying to respect Northern Ireland's place in the United Kingdom and its customs territory, but also its relationship with the Republic of Ireland, and to allow for no border to exist on the island of Ireland. All of those things, I think, are respected and supported by all sides in the political debate. I think the key challenge we have at the moment is with some of the technical aspects of how that is working, and with concerns that are being thrown up by that. And I think it's really important that we work with the EU, with the Irish government, to try and resolve some of those. Right from the heart of the UK government, from the Prime Minister downwards through Michael Gove and Brandon and myself, we're all trying to work to make a success of the protocol, and actually to make sure that it can do the job that it was set up to do, which is to protect everyday life in Northern Ireland, but also to protect the institutions of the peace process, which by and large have been a huge success. And I think it's important that we all rededicate ourselves to that mission, to delivering on that, and to making sure that the EU understand as well the importance of respecting those elements of the protocol which are focused on allowing people to go about their lives as normal. Because some of the issues that we've seen, some of the concerns, for instance, about secondhand cars and potentially increasing the VAT on those, could have a real negative impact on people's daily lives in Northern Ireland if they were applied in the wrong way. So we've worked hard to resolve some of those, but clearly there are further issues that need to be resolved, and it's in the interests of everybody, I think, however they identify in terms of community, to try and make this work. That's where we are, really, and that's where I think from the top of government downwards, there is that determination to work on the detail of this.
Absolutely. I think at the moment it's I think a lot of I suppose calm heads are needed at the moment. There's a lot of aggressive language being thrown about. I know there's kind of meetings kind of going on about threats and all of that. It's very intimidating to a lot of people. And I suppose with one side of the community has been very vocally against the Northern Ireland Protocol. Unionists from, I know, listening to Nolan Live in the mornings, and I suppose watching the news, you can see a lot of very active anger in the unionist community. Is, in, I suppose, the eyes of the Conservative government, is the Northern Ireland Protocol, is that, I suppose, something that can be compromised or changed or even scrapped, as many are calling for, or is it set in stone?
We have been clear, and the Prime Minister has been clear, that if we were to be in a situation where there were irreconcilable issues affecting the daily lives of people in Northern Ireland, then Article 16 would be an option. But it's not the option we want to use. What we want to be able to do is to work constructively with the European Union to resolve any technical issues arising from the protocol and make sure that it can do what it was intended to do, and make sure that it allows for the smooth movement of goods from Northern Ireland into Great Britain, and also from Great Britain into Northern Ireland, also north-south. And I think there are good reasons why that's in the interest, I think, of the whole of Northern Ireland, and indeed of the UK and the Republic of Ireland. If we can make this work effectively, I think it can be a real opportunity for young people in Northern Ireland, that they will have a unique opportunity to sell into the whole of the UK market and the whole of the EU single market, and one which places Northern Ireland very well in terms of jobs and investment. But I accept that over the last few weeks there have been some challenges, and there have been some real concerns about the movement of goods and about potential disruption of that. These are issues that we now need to work through, as you say, with calm heads. And recognizing that nobody wants to see a return to the kind of divisions that we saw in the past, and a return to the kind of threats there. I think there have been some vocal voices on that front, but actually what we've seen by and large is that people are able to go about their daily lives as normal, that goods are flowing into Northern Ireland. That includes, of course, the key medical goods and vaccines that we need to deal with the COVID situation. It's really important we keep that going, and it's really important that we keep that support that is there, and that I think benefits everyone, whether they're in Northern Ireland, whether they're in the wider island of Ireland, or whether they're part of the UK.
Brilliant. Another thing I want to talk about is you have in the past identified yourself as a one nation conservative, and I know that, I suppose, in Northern Ireland the conservative Labour dynamic isn't something that we really actually have. But for those of us who are more interested in actually learning about the Westminster system, I know I have to study it in school, but what actually is a one nation conservative? What does that mean, and what does it mean to you?
Well, to me, it means a country. We need to work on a country that works for everybody, and whatever your background, you ought to be able to succeed in our country, in the United Kingdom, and that we have to have a government that balances the need for efficiency with the need for compassion. And for me, this is very much about being right in the centre ground of politics, where we are dealing with people's priorities. We're dealing with delivering good public services. We're dealing with protecting the security of our country. But I think it's in the interest of anyone who claims to be a patriot and believes in their country to want it to work for as many people as possible. And I think for me, a lot of the definition of a one nation conservative is to define yourself not in terms of believing that you represent one particular group of people or another, but you're actually working to make the country succeed as a whole. And I think that's important in the context of the Union. I want to have a United Kingdom that works for people in Northern Ireland, in Scotland, in Wales, and in England, because I think that's in all of our interest to do. And actually, I want people who might identify as Irish to be able to see the benefits of the United Kingdom, and things like the health service, things like the systems of support we've been able to put in place during the pandemic, like the furlough scheme, which has helped many people to stay and work. I think we have some success stories there, which we need to work on together. But I think part of therefore being a one nation conservative is taking that approach of saying, well, how does this affect people in all different parts of the country? And how do we make sure we get the best outcomes all across the country, particularly for young people who, of course, are its future?
Absolutely. And one of the big things, I suppose, topics at the moment is the Northern Ireland Centenary. Some are, I suppose there's a lot of division on everything from whether we should call it a celebration to a commemoration, whether it should happen, whether there should be any kind of celebration of the state at all, or whether it should be kind of just something just to kind of keep quiet and not really mention. So I suppose, what is the position of you and the Conservative Party, and I suppose the NIO, in regards to this commemoration or celebration? Or
So we made commitments as part of the New Decade, New Approach deal, which got the executive restored. We made commitments to engaging with and supporting the centenary, and that was something which, of course, had cross-party, cross-community endorsement as an approach. I recognise that there are different groups of people for whom this is a celebration or it isn't, and there will be some people who say they don't want to celebrate 100 years of Northern Ireland for understandable concerns that they have over the fact of partition happening 100 years ago. But there will be many others for whom this is a celebration of their home place. And I think what we've got to make sure actually is that we are celebrating the people of Northern Ireland, their contribution, their achievements, some of the amazing scientific developments which have been reached here in Northern Ireland, I think are absolutely worthy of celebration. We've had some controversy, of course, about the involvement of Seamus Heaney as an icon, but I think it's important to demonstrate that Northern Ireland makes a cultural contribution which crosses both nationalism and unionism, and which is a contribution to the canon of literature in the English language, as well as its contribution in the Irish language. So I think all of these things are things that we can celebrate and commemorate in a sensitive way. But most importantly, I don't think the centenary should be all about the past. I think it should also be about looking to the future. And that's where I think young people can really come into it and help to shape some of the events of the centenary. We've been quite determined through our shared history fund that we launched with £1 million of funding and issued through the Heritage Lottery Fund. That should be open to bids from all communities from right across Northern Ireland to do things that look at the history of different communities in Northern Ireland and how they've been affected over the centenary. But we also want to look to the future, and we want to support jobs for young people. We want to look at the green economy and how we can support some of the areas that young people will be working in the future there, to build on the successes of Northern Ireland's industries like cybersecurity. And I think the centenary gives us a good opportunity to actually check in on some of those things and to promote Northern Ireland, both across the UK and more widely, as a place to invest. That investment, in turn, will help young people, help to create jobs for the future, and help to build opportunities for young people across Northern Ireland.
Brilliant. I know, I suppose, especially from people from a nationalist community, I know my community would be largely nationalist. I know I go to a Catholic school, so a large nationalist population in my area. But one of the things, I suppose, in talking about it that I've seen raised is the idea of it kind of, it's not something that a lot of nationalists want to celebrate. It's kind of almost the opposite of their ideology almost. But there are some who have also then put forward the idea of celebrating things like the Good Friday Agreement and the actual progress we've taken from Good Friday and the future that we can make, whether it's in the UK or whether it's in the United Ireland or even at independent Northern Ireland. There's all of the different things. So
I think that's a really good point, and I think it is, the case when looking back over 100 years, there's a huge amount that has changed, and there is a huge achievement of many people from across communities in Northern Ireland in what's happened with civil rights and the developments there. The Good Friday Agreement is something that was celebrated around the world as something which was a real mark of progress, and I think it's absolutely legitimate for people to choose to focus their interest in the centenary on issues like that. What we were keen to do in designing a programme for the centenary was to be clear that it wasn't for us in the NIO to write a single narrative that everyone had to follow. We want to make sure that different communities and different groups of people can come together and look at this centenary in different ways and look at the experiences of different parts of the community over the last centenary. But I think that's also where, with the branding that we focused on, our history in the making, it's about the fact that actually Northern Ireland's future is in the hands of its own people. And whether we're talking about the protocol and the continuation of that of course is in the hands of future assembly members. As to how long that will remain in place, or whether we're talking about the Good Friday Agreement itself and the principle of consent, it's very clear that the people of Northern Ireland will decide its future, and I think that is a good thing. And I think that is definitely something which it's important for young people to be able to play their part in that, and to be able to get involved in politics without fear of intimidation and the kind of threats that we've seen in the past. One thing I'm absolutely passionate about, and I always say when I visit local schools, even in my own constituency, is that the more young people get involved in politics, the better. and that's across parties, across ideologies. I just think actually young people bring an energy and a passion to politics, which is incredibly valued. And I know in my party, as in every party, the contribution of young volunteers is enormous. So I would say to your listeners, do get involved and feel free to have your say. Voting is one element of the thing, but it's by no means the only way in which young people can have an influence.
Brilliant. I suppose one final thing that I want to touch on is the world at the moment seems to be quite doom and gloom. Brexit's been a bit messy. COVID has ravaged the world. The economy's in a mess. It's quite easy to, I suppose, let it get you down, and it's very understandable why it would. But if you could, I suppose, not just address my listeners, address the young people of both Northern Ireland and the UK. If you could, I suppose, give them a message as to how to get through it, what would you, I suppose, give them?
Well, it's a hugely important question. I know, for people who've been sort of sitting at home looking at a computer screen for far too long, as we all have to some extent, there have been enormous frustrations over the last few months, and we all want to get out of that situation as quickly as possible. I think one thing that I've always been struck by, and particularly in my visits and meeting young people in Northern Ireland, is the ambition, energy, and adaptability that people have. And I think the fact that people have met some of the challenges that Northern Ireland has faced in the past, and then gone on to build, for instance, a world-leading cybersecurity industry, some of the most exciting renewables projects that we see anywhere in the world, some really exciting medical technology that's coming out of Northern Ireland at the moment. The fact that people have been able to do those things despite the challenges that Northern Ireland has faced in previous generations, I think is an inspiration to me to want to make sure that we can take more of those opportunities in the future. And for all that the pandemic has put a huge pressure on international travel and the global nature of our world, I think young people will have very wide horizons in the future. They will have greater than ever opportunities, and really the adaptability and resilience that people have learned through this will stand them in good stead for the future. So I think there are reasons to be optimistic, but I think it's also crucial that government plays its part in that, and that's why we put forward this £400 million new deal for Northern Ireland to support the economy and to deal with any of the issues relating to the protocol. It's also why we're looking at city and growth deals so that every part of Northern Ireland can benefit from investment to level up and to make a difference in the economy. Some of these things really matter to creating and supporting those opportunities for young people. But I think the people who have been through these just quite extraordinary and unprecedented times will all bring with them a greater degree of resilience in the future, which has to stand us in good stead. So I'm hopeful that as we unlock and as we move forward, Northern Ireland's economy will be well placed to benefit from the global opportunities that sit in front of us, but also from the opportunities of unlocking the pandemic, fixing the challenges that we've seen with the protocol, and making it work for the interests of people in Northern Ireland.
Absolutely. I think we're going to wrap it up there. Thank you so much for coming on, Minister.
Great. Pleasure to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you too. To everyone listening, thank you for listening. We'll see you all next time.